Hi, and welcome to the Canvas Church podcast, where you can listen to our weekly sermons. Thanks for joining us on this journey as we look to God's Word to mold us into people becoming the church.
Well, good morning, Canvas. Man, it's great to see you all here today. I echo what Shane said earlier. You all look spectacularly awful. So, well done. Our ugly sweater Sunday, always a great time. Man, I'm really excited for this morning and here in a moment jumping into part 3 of our Christmas series, Stories of Christmas. It's been such a joy to be able to listen to those on our teaching team communicate the last couple of weeks. It's always helpful, I think, for us as a church and healthy to get different voices and to hear different perspectives. So really thankful for those who step up and step in and have the gift to teach and utilize that for our church. I hope you recognize how healthy that is and how helpful that is for us as a church. So can you help me thank those who have stepped in and taught the last few weeks? Now, that being said, when I've got a few weeks off, I always am chomping at the bit to get back up here because I love teaching God's Word. And before we jump to it, I just want to echo again what Shane said. If you're a guest, man, I'm really glad that you're here. My name's Nate. I get to serve on the team, and I'd love to meet you afterwards. We'll have plenty of time as we're drinking hot chocolate or apple cider out there in the lobby. So here we are, part 3 of our series, Stories of Christmas. And as I was preparing for this message, I had a realization. Christmas is super divisive. And I had a feeling that you were going to respond like that. So I prepared just a little game just to prove my point. So you're going to see some thises or that's. They're going to pop up on the screen. And I want you to get a little bit loud in here today if you're one or the other. Fair? All right, get your hoopers and hollers. If you just want to clap, that's fine, but whatever. All right, here we go. Hot chocolate or eggnog? Hot chocolate, people? Eggnog. Okay. Sugar cookies or mincemeat? Sugar cookies. Mincemeat. Yes, I love you people. Some of you are like, I have never even heard of mincemeat in my life. It sounds disgusting. It's not. It's wonderful. You should try it. How about this? It's a Wonderful Life or Elf? It's a Wonderful Life. Let's hear you. Elf? This one's real controversial. Grandma got ran over by a reindeer or Away in a Manger? Grandma got ran over. Oh, honest people. Away in a Manger. Okay, how about this next one? Real tree or fake tree? Real treers? Fake treers? Okay, this is pretty even. I like this. How about white lights or multicolored? White lights? 100%. Multicolored. Minimal decor or more is more kind of decor? Minimalists, who are you? More is more. We've got a house in our neighborhood. We drive by it every time we get into our neighborhood. And these people are the Clark Griswold of Christmas lights. Like what Clark Griswold is to Christmas lights. To these people in the blow up, the little fan things, you know, they got like a 3-story Santa Claus or something in their yard. It's crazy. All right, how about this? What's next? Online shopping or in person? Onliners. In person. All right, here we go. Wrapping paper or gift bags? How many wrapping paper you just like folded up? How many you've let gift bags just like take over your life? Oh, I'm surprised. Okay, how about this? Stockings first or presents first? Stockings? Presents? Oh, more stockings. Interesting. Okay. How about this? Open gifts all at once or one at a time so we can watch everybody open their gifts? All at once. One at a time. I'm very grateful for you guys that you come on, let's slow down and let's be present with one another as we go here. Okay, we've got just one more here. Snowy Christmas or sunny Christmas? Snowy Christmas. I shouldn't even ask the next one. Sunny Christmas? Oh, stop it, you people. The warmer it got this week, the sadder I became. I want more snow. You see, that little exercise, as we worked our way through it, it just proves that Christmas is full of many little decisions. The thises or that's of Christmas time. Now, most of those choices, as you saw, made with little to no effort, right? Probably primarily just the way that you were raised. It was like the tradition, what you grew up with. This is how my family did it. And now this is how my family is going to do it. And you know that first Christmas when two people get married and how much chaos is around that first Christmas. In fact, I have somebody just honestly this last week tell me, said, Nate, when you got us ready for marriage, you did not spend nearly enough time on how much conflict surrounds Christmas. I said, fair enough. Most of those choices, they're just made haphazardly, right? And in the end, really, there's no right or wrong, but clearly, there's a dichotomy. It's either this or that. It's one or the other. And today, we're going to see in our text that the arrival of Jesus was dichotomous. It divided people. There was this group of people, and there was that group of people. And what I want us to recognize right at the front of this thing is that everybody responds to Jesus. Everybody responds to Jesus. Whether you're listening online, where you're here, this is your first time, or you've been coming for decades, every one of us responds to Jesus somehow. So here's the question that I want us to wrestle with. It's the question that we've been asking since the beginning of the series. It's a question that we'll continue to ask. And our hope by asking it week after week after week is that it's a question that lodges in your mind here at Christmas time and then reverberates throughout the year as well. Here's the question. How are you responding to Jesus? How are you responding to Jesus? The answer to that question is paramount. It's the pinnacle. In fact, I would contend that there is no greater question that needs to be wrestled with in this life than that simple question, how am I responding to Jesus? How am I responding? And it's part of what I love about Christmas. Christmas takes up about 10% of the calendar year by the time you factor it all in, and it is uniquely focused on Jesus. You walk through the mall and you hear Christmas songs singing about Emmanuel, God with us. People around this time, during this season, seem to be more primed than other times of the year to wrestle with this question, who is Jesus? And how am I responding to him? Christmas gives us such a beautiful opportunity. And here's what I would contend this morning, and this is a statement that I hope, again, gets deep in your brain and gets down in your heart, and it's simply this: Jesus requires a response. Jesus requires a response. For some of you, you would not consider yourself a follower of Jesus yet. You feel as though maybe you're in some neutral zone in this decision-making process. I haven't rejected him, but I haven't accepted him. And what you need to know this morning is there's only one of two camps. You've either accepted Jesus or you've rejected him. Jesus is dichotomous. You have to choose him or reject him. Now, just in case you were thinking you've been here for a long time, you've been following Jesus for a long time, and you started to downshift this morning thinking to yourself, well, this certainly is a message that only revolves around those who have not yet accepted Jesus. You need to know right out of the gate that this is a question for longtime followers of Jesus to wrestle with as well. How are you responding to him? What does this Christmas look like for you? Have you paused long enough to think about the incredible reality that God steps out of eternity and joins humanity in the baby in the manger? How has that impacted your life? How has that shifted the way you're celebrating Christmas this year? You see, this question, how am I responding to Jesus, is not just for the unbeliever or the not yet believer. It's for the seasoned one as well. How am I this season responding to Jesus? Because Jesus requires a response. This morning, we're going to see in our text two different groups of people. And they respond to Jesus radically different from one another. It's in Matthew chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 1 through 12 and then summarize the rest of the chapter for you. And then we're going to dive in together. Likely you're familiar with this story. This is Matthew's account of Jesus' birth. Matthew and Luke, they give us really clear accounts of Jesus' birth. The Gospel of John gives us one that attaches Jesus all the way back to creation. I love John's opening chapter. And then Mark, he skips through all of it and he just gets right to Jesus' birth, or Jesus' baptism rather. And this morning we're going to be taking a look at Matthew chapter 2, Matthew's account of Jesus' birth. And this is what it says. Chapter 2, verse 1. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of the religious law and asked, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they said, "for this is what the prophet wrote." And then they go on to quote Micah chapter 5, verse 2. It says, "And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you who will be my shepherd, who will be the shepherd rather for my people Israel." Then Herod called for a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. Then he told them, "Go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child. And when you find him, come back and tell me so that I can go and worship him too." After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. Then it goes on to say that after they had left, the wise men had left, an angel came and appeared to Joseph, again in a dream. Like, Joseph has a lot of encounters with angels. And this angel shows up, and he tells him, "You need to leave this area, go into Egypt, because Herod is going to go on a murderous rampage. He's looking for your son so that he can murder him." And this is what it says. That night, Joseph packed up his family and went to Egypt. And they went to Egypt and they stayed there until King Herod had died. See, let me back up a second. Herod does exactly what the angel had told Joseph he was going to do. When he realized that the wise men had outwitted him, rather than coming back through his land, they went a different route. It made him furious. And this is what he does. He sends people out throughout the land to kill every baby 2 years old or younger. This guy's a wild man. He's crazy. So So Joseph and his family, they stay in Egypt until Herod dies. And then an angel comes and says, it's okay for you to go back to Israel. So they start heading back to Israel, and Joseph finds out that King Herod's son is the one that took over, and he gets afraid of him as well. So they go on past all the way up into Galilee to a little town called Nazareth. In fact, it's where the journey began. They go back home to be with their family up in Nazareth. Now, in this passage, we see the wise men and King Herod. And both of these present two radically different responses to Jesus. Two completely polar opposite responses. Both of them got word that there's a new king in town, and they both have wildly different responses to it. And their contrasting responses will help us get a real honest picture of what's going on in our hearts. As we look through their lives, as we look through their responses, it gives us a window, a viewpoint into our own hearts, into our own lives to see what's really going on inside of us. But before we get to that, I want to take a look at each of these individually to help set the backdrop for us in this story. Now, King Herod, he's a crazy man, as you've already learned if you've read this or just heard for the first time what he did to all of those children in his land. He's a crazy man. He's wildly interesting. Like, I'd encourage you, just take a quick search, like do a quick background search into King Herod. And he's super interesting. In fact, I had to really refrain from making this a history lesson for you because I know it's like less than a fraction of you that are interested in history. But I love digging into his background. You see, Herod's reign, it set up the political, it set up the cultural, it set up the architectural landscape that Jesus was born into. His reign had no small impact on the culture that Jesus ended up in his day. Herod, he was a descendant of Esau, not Jacob. And this is an important little piece of history. In order to grasp the importance of it, we have to go backwards just a little bit to Abraham. See, Abraham, God had made a promise to Abraham that he was going to have a descendant, and from him a nation would be born, right? And that God would bless that nation so that they would be a blessing to all the other nations. And Abraham has two sons. He has a son Ishmael, and he has a son Isaac. And God chose Isaac to be the one whom he used to fulfill his promise to Abraham. And then Isaac also had two sons. He had a son Esau, and he had a son Jacob. And God chose Jacob to be the one that God would fulfill his promise to Abraham through. And then also, then Jacob, he has 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob's name literally becomes Israel, the one who wrestles with God. So, Isaac, two sons, Esau and Jacob. Jacob goes on to fulfill the promises of God. Esau ends up as Uncle Eddie in the story. Uncle Eddie, like, yeah, that's my uncle, but I would prefer not to really identify him with him at all, right? He's this long-lost uncle. So the fact that King Herod comes from the line of Esau means most of the Jews of his day did not consider him a legitimate Jew. They saw him as an outcast. He was not fully Jewish. But his family had been forcibly converted into Judaism under the Hasmonean reign. The Hasmonean reign, again, let's just back up, indulge me just for a second so that we can have some handles on this. The Hasmonean reign is akin to the Maccabees revolt. So you take these big kingdoms, right? You have Assyria, and then you have Babylon, and then you have Persia, and then you have Greece. Greece splits into two fractions, one of them being the Seleucids. The Seleucids, they decide to outlaw Judaism. No more Judaism. You can't have temple sacrifice. You can't go worship there any longer. In fact, they set up temple idols. They set up idols in the temple, pagan idols in the temple. And finally, there's this guy named Mattathias. He says, I'm having no more of that, and he sets up an armed revolt against it. He gets killed. His son Judas Maccabees, he takes over, and they wipe out the Seleucids, redeeming and regaining the temple. They purify it, and they set up shop there again. And that's what Jews, starting tomorrow, begin to celebrate as Hanukkah. It's pretty amazing, right? This rebirth of the temple. Now, as every dynasty happens, it fractures as well. People want control, people want power. In the Hasmonean dynasty, it fractures as well. And in its fracturing, both sides reach out to this up-and-coming global power called Rome. And they reach out to Rome in hopes that they're going to get Rome on their side. But Rome, Pompey being the smart strategist he was like, I see this as an opportunity not to pick a side, one or the other, but to take control myself. And he walks into the temple in AD 64, essentially ending the Hasmonean dynasty. And Rome begins to take over control at that point. Now, in AD 37, I believe it is, Rome establishes Herod as king of the Jews. King of the Jews. So Herod steps into this position, not even being Jewish, but receiving this title, King of the Jews. But here's the problem. Herod was a deeply insecure and paranoid human being. So self-protective that he killed one of his wives, his mother-in-law, her brother, and 3 of the children that he had with the woman. Why? Because he was afraid that they were going to take his throne. Even modern psychologists would diagnose him with what they call dark triad traits. Narcissism, right? His grandeur was what's most important to him. His image, the way everybody sees him, that's what's absolutely most important to him. Manipulation. He'll use any tactic in any person. People are not relationships to be had. They're tools to be wielded. And he'll use them however he can to regain his power or to remain in control. So narcissism, manipulation, and cruelty. He will stop at nothing to retain control and power. Even a cursory look at his historical life. I know it's so easy to open the Bible and read through it and just seem like these are just stories in print. Herod's a real dude. You can trace his lineage back. Like you can read about his reign. This is a historical account of a real person. And just a cursory look at the history of his life reveals that Matthew's account of King Herod fits perfectly with his paranoid personality. So when you do a study like that about Herod, you come back to the text and you go, man, God, thank you for preserving this for me so I could understand and I could read and I could trust what you have written down for me here. So that's King Herod, bonkers, out of his mind. And then you have the wise men, also called the Magi or astrologers. They were high-ranking scholars in their society. They were educated. They were intellectual elites from the East. They were experts in things like astronomy and mathematics and medicine. And as Gentiles, they weren't looking to Creator God to teach them about the world. They were looking to the stars to understand the world. In their 800-mile journey, let me say that again, 800-mile journey. It was like if they were coming from the east for us, they started in Bismarck, North Dakota, and they saw a star rise, and they started walking towards it. Their 800-mile journey reveals to us that they recognized something extraordinary had taken place. Something extraordinary was in process. They recognized that something amazing was on the horizon, but they didn't recognize it for political reasons. They recognized it because they saw it in the prophecies. Although they were Gentiles, they must have been studied in the Hebrew scriptures because they knew the account in in Numbers chapter 24, where it's promised that a star would rise. And when they saw, they were familiar with stars and they saw a new one, they're like, whoa, what is that? That must be the prophecy in Numbers 24. Let's follow it and find where it leads us. I love how responsive the wise men were to the revelation of God. They didn't just sit around and wait. They packed up for an 800-mile walking journey to go worship him. And that's exactly what happens. The two worlds of the wise men and Herod, they collide in this one simple question. Where is the King of the Jews? Where's the King of the Jews? They were asking because they wanted to worship. Their asking made Herod feel incredibly threatened. It's exactly what happens. What comes next in this story, it sets the stage for us to get real honest about what's going on in our hearts, in our lives as well. Is Jesus truly the King of our lives? You see, this is what the wise men said. They said, where is the King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him. How amazing is that? Let's let the gravity of that settle in. It can be hard for us on a weekly and a regular basis to gather together and sing songs of worship and sit under the teaching of God's word. These guys saddled up donkeys and camels, and they went on an 800-mile journey walking so that they could worship Jesus. It's incredible. And this Christmas season could get so chaotic and so out of control and all of the things to get done. But if we miss worshiping at the feet of Jesus, we've missed the whole reason. We've missed the whole point. So their response to the star rising in the east was, we're going to go and we're going to worship. But it says King Herod was deeply disturbed when he had heard this. You see, Herod, his whole identity, everything that he had, everything that he hoped for, all of life was centered on his throne. And when he got word that there was a new king in town, it disturbed him deeply. Same realization, there's a new king. Two radically different responses. And at Christmas time, or rather, the Christmas story reveals spiritual postures that still exist today. These are two extreme examples for sure, right? 800 miles walking to worship, or a king that's so bent on having control that he does atrocious things in order to hold on to it. I get that these are two polar opposites. And when you hear two different extremes, it's easy to check out and say, well, it doesn't really apply to me today. And I would say that's just simply not true. Just because these are extremes, don't dismiss the truth that each of their postures reveals about us. You see, every one of us was created to worship. We were all created to worship. Again, if you're not a follower of Jesus yet, you need to know that you were created to worship God. And that's why there's this emptiness inside that you can't quite put your finger on. You can't quite fill. There's just some emptiness. There's a longing. That longing is a deep desire to be a worshiper of God. The scriptures tell us this over and over again. We were all created to worship, but we all resist giving up control in our lives. Why? Because each one of us has little Herods lodged inside of our hearts. Each one of us It's easy to look at Herod and say, man, that guy was a monster. But the reality is each one of us have little Herods lodged deep in our hearts that want us to gain or maintain control of our lives. We want autonomy. We want to call the shots. We want to be the king. We want to do it the way we want to do it. So what I want to do for the rest of our time together is look at 3 contrasting responses. How the wise men responded and how Herod responded, in hopes that we'll pinpoint in our own heart and life where we're acting like wise men or where we're acting like Herods. Number 1 is this: the wise men were drawn to Jesus. Herod was threatened by him. The wise men were drawn to Jesus. Herod was threatened by him, right? He was repulsed by him, made him stand back. You see, Jesus is in pursuit of every one of us. Jesus is coming after every one of us. Jesus is drawing near to every one of us. In fact, if you're here and again, you haven't said yes to Jesus, you don't identify as a Christian, you're like, I'm not exactly sure how Jesus is in pursuit of me. I would say the fact that you're here this morning is proof positive that Jesus is in pursuit of you. Like he's running after you. Maybe you're waiting for a star to rise in the east so that you can follow after that star. And I would say, let this be your star today. Let this text be the star that points you towards Jesus and you start walking towards him. For me, I see Jesus drawing me in different areas when I'm on a drive by myself and the music's off and I'm just left in my thoughts and I'm just thinking about life and the world and all. Like, I feel Jesus drawing me in those moments. I feel Jesus drawing me when I'm standing at the base of a mountain looking up at its grandeur. Like, I see Jesus drawing me in a lot of different areas. I don't know what it looks like for you, but here's the question that I have, because I do believe Jesus is drawing you this Christmas season. Here's the question. When Jesus draws near, do you lean in or do you back away? Do you lean into it or do you back away from it? Those moments where maybe your head's on your pillow at night and you're thinking about life and you're thinking about everything. You start going down this road like, who is Jesus? What does he mean to me? And you wince. Like, now I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to occupy my mind with something else. When Jesus draws near, do you? Do you lean in or do you back away from him? See, the wise men were drawn to Jesus. Herod was threatened by him. And my hope is that every one of us would begin to lean in. We would begin to lean into him. And the wise men didn't just lean in. The second is the wise men bowed in worship. The wise men bowed in worship, but Herod hardened in resistance. He hardened in resistance. You see, they both were introduced to Jesus, and the wise men went to worship him, to bow at his feet. Herod got angry and hardened. The news of Jesus, it's going to require a response from every one of us. Are we going to soften in worship? Or are we going to harden as a response like Herod did? Here's a question to roll or wrestle around with. When Jesus' authority presses on your life, do you bend or do you brace? When Jesus' authority presses on your life. Listen, I've been under the thumb of Jesus when he's wanted control of something in my life, like my anger, like my ability to forgive, like my willingness to love, willingness to be generous. When Jesus presses in on that area in your life where you're like, no, I want to keep this under my control. What do? Do you bend? Do you come underneath his leadership and his lordship in your life? Or do you brace and resist and say, I will not bow my knee? I will not give up my life. I'm the king, thanks very much. You can't have control here. What is your posture? And I wish I could say, as I take inventory of my life, that every time Jesus presses in with his authority on my life, that I always bend to his will. That's simply not true. So many times I find myself bracing up underneath it, making excuses for it, rationalizing my behavior because I want to be in control of my life. But here's my hope this Christmas season is that every one of us takes an opportunity in time to slow down enough to let Jesus press on areas of our life, to prove his authority over our lives and see, are we going to bend to his will, or are we going to brace up underneath it, resist it, and push back against it? So the wise men were drawn to Jesus. Herod was threatened by him. The wise men bowed in worship. Herod hardened in resistance. And the third and final is the wise men offered their treasure, but Herod clung to his throne. See, true acts of obedience, true acts of worship will always cost us something. They will always cost us something. It is a costly endeavor to give our lives to Jesus. And what did the wise men do? They bowed. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, some of the most costly gifts they could ever bring. They brought an 800-mile journey so they could lay it at the feet of Jesus. Herod had the opportunity with vast resources to offer them up in worship to Jesus, but instead, what did he do? He clung to his throne. He sought to kill the one who might take it over. So here's a question to kind of sort out what's going on in your heart and in your life this Christmas season. When following Jesus costs you something, do you open up your hands or do you tighten your grip? Christmas is a great opportunity to wrestle around with that question. When following Jesus costs me something, do I give it to Jesus freely as an offering of worship to him? Or do I close my fists and hold it to myself, hoarding the things that I have for me and me alone? You see, Jesus, he requires a response. There is no neutral ground with Jesus. And if the last 35 minutes hasn't taught you that, I encourage you, go read Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 through the end of the chapter this week. Read it sometime today and see what Jesus calls followers of him to. And there is no neutral ground. We are either following him or we're against him, Jesus said. See, Herod, he resisted. The wise men, they worshiped. So as we close, I come back one more time to this question. How are you responding to Jesus this Christmas season? What is your response to him? Have you given enough space in your life to respond to him? You see, Herod reveals the self-protective, self-centered heart that resists Jesus, while the wise men display the humble, seeking, worshiping heart that comes when we welcome Jesus. Herod didn't resist Jesus because he misunderstood who he was. He understood too well who he was, and he was afraid that he was going to take his control. A true king threatens every other little Herod in your life. So when we give ourselves to the true king, he will come rid out the Herods inside of us that want to rule because Jesus wants control. So Christmas invites us. It's a time of year that invites us to surrender to the throne, to surrender the throne of our hearts to the true king and welcome Jesus as king of our lives. I've got 2 takeaways. I'm going to pray. Adam's going to come and share a couple things with you. Here are the takeaways. Number 1, let Jesus reveal what you're holding on to. Let him press in on your life. What are you holding on to? Let him reveal it, and then invite him to show you where your heart is bracing instead of bending. Man, take 5-10 minutes every morning sitting in that one thing. Lord, where am I bracing? Where am I resisting against you? Help me to bend my knee to you. Second one is this. Move toward trust in Jesus. Take one step that says, Jesus, you are my King. And I think it would be foolish this morning to move on from this message without giving a crystal clear invite for those of you who are here and you have not said, Jesus is my King. You've not bowed to him, surrendered to him as Lord of your life. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand here in a second with every head up and every eye open. But you've been wrestling. Like you recognize you thought you were in a neutral zone, but this morning you recognize that because you haven't said yes to him, that you are actually in opposition to him. And this morning you want that to end. And you want to say, Jesus, I want you to be Lord of my life. If that's you in this place, go ahead and raise your hand. I would love to take time to pray with you today. Anybody? Okay. But I want you to know this. You don't have to raise your hand in a gathering like this. I think it's an important declaration. I think it's a bold, courageous move. I never regretted the day that I raised my hand in a gathering like this and said yes to Jesus. But it doesn't require a gathering like this. You can do it out in the lobby today. You can do it this afternoon when you're at home. And it just simply looks like this. Lord, I've been resisting you. Jesus, but I believe who you are. I believe that you died for me. I want to live for you. Thank you for forgiving me of my sins. Thanks for living the life that I couldn't, dying the death that I deserve. I believe that you came back to life so that I could have life. So I want to trust you with mine. And a simple prayer like that doesn't have to be the exact words, but a simple prayer like that enters you into a relationship with Jesus where you step over the dichotomy, out of opposition into relationship. And I would just love to know at some point that you've made that decision. I'm going to pray and then Adam's going to come. Lord, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for penning it for us so we can see these two extremes. God, I want in every area of my life to respond as the wise men did. And I pray that this Christmas season would be a prime opportunity for an inventory of my heart and my life, figure out where those little Herods are at and where they're trying to stay in control, Lord. And I want to give them over to you. Help every one of us to do that, Lord. Help us to respond well to who you are this Christmas season. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Thanks for tuning in. This concludes today's message. New sermon podcasts are uploaded by Tuesday of each week. We'd also love to invite you to our live gatherings each Sunday at 10 a.m. Our gatherings are also streamed live on YouTube and Facebook each week. On behalf of the Canvas Church team, we hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next time.